The Cincinnati Reds and Jeimer Candelario agreed on a 3-year, $45 million contract. Candelario is expected to play first base, third base, and DH for the Reds. But here's the thing. The Reds have a lot of infielders. And not just any regular infielders, but young, controllable, pretty dang good infielders. Does that sound like something that maybe your Seattle Mariners could use? Yeah, we've mocked a trade with the Reds quite a bit. Spencer Steer, Christian Encarnacion-Strand, maybe Noelvi Marte, bringing him home, and the Reds are looking for young pitching. It seems like a match made in heaven, but is it going to happen? Because we've talked a lot about how the Mariners don't want to trade one of their starting pitchers now for some ungodly reason. That's the only way that they're going to get a hitter that they need. Let's look at the options that the Mariners could get from the Reds and see if any of them fit, as well as what the packages look like. First, let's start with Spencer Steer. He's a first baseman, third baseman, and he plays the outfield as well. He is 26 years old. Oh my goodness, today I'm recording this, it's his birthday. Happy birthday, Spencer Steer. And he made his MLB debut in 2022. The Mariners would have him through the 2028 season. In 2023, Steer hit 271, 356, 464 with a 119 OPS plus in 156 games. He also hit 23 home runs with 86 RBI, 15 stolen bags, and he did strike out 139 times. Now that equated to a 20.9 strikeout percentage in one full season for Steer, which is below league average. He also walked at a 10.2 clip, which is above league average. Next up is Christian Encarnacion-Strand. He's a first baseman, third baseman, and designated hitter. Bats right, throws right. He turned 24 on December 1st, and he was drafted by the Mariners in the 34th round, by the way, in the amateur draft. And then he declined and went to college in Prescott, Arizona. And then with the Minnesota Twins, he was drafted in June of 2021. Strand is a guy who will not be a free agent until 2030. He will play all the way through the 2029 season if he was traded to the Mariners. And in 2023, Strand hit 270, 328, 477 with a 113 OPS plus in about 241 plate appearances. He also hit 13 home runs, 37 RBI, and he struck out 69 times. Nice. Strand definitely strikes out above league average at 28.6%. He also walks below league average at 5.8. Then there's everybody's favorite former Mariner of Noelvi Marte. He's a third baseman and shortstop. He bats right and throws right. He is just 22 years old and made his debut in 2023. Again, the Reds would have him through the 2029 season. He wouldn't be a free agent until 2030. Noelvi only played in 35 games, but he hit 316, 366, 456 with a 120 OPS plus with 3 home runs and 15 RBI. He struck out 25 times and walked 8 times. That was good for a 20.3% strikeout rate, although obviously, that's not a whole lot of playing time, so it's really hard to judge this, and also a 6.5% walk percentage. Then there's McLain. He's a shortstop and second baseman, bats right, throws right. He is also 24 years old, and he will not be a free agent again until 2030. In 2023, McLain hit 290, 357, 507 with a 129 OPS plus. He hit 16 home runs with 50 RBI. He struck out 115 times and walked 31 times. That was good for an above league average strikeout rate at 28.5% and a walk rate below league average at 7.7%. I don't even know why I'm mentioning Elly De La Cruz, because it's pretty obvious he's never going to become a Seattle Mariner. He's not going to get traded this offseason, but hey, here we are. He's a switch hitter. He throws right-handed. He's a shortstop and third baseman. He's 21 going on 22 years old, and he again would not be a free agent till 2030. De La Cruz hit 235, 300, 410 with an 89 OPS. Plus, he hit 13 home runs with 44 RBI, 35 stolen bases, 144 strikeouts, however, and 35 walks in 98 games. That was good for a 33.7% strikeout rate and an 8.2% walk rate. De La Cruz's numbers were definitely the worst of all the guys we've looked at, but in my opinion, he has the highest ceiling, and he's also just 21 years old. And that leaves the most likely candidate, Jonathan India, who's just about to turn 27 years old. He is a second baseman. He bats right and throws right. He would not be a free agent until the 2027 season. In 2023, Jonathan India hit 244, 338, 407 with a 100 exactly OPS plus. He had 17 home runs, 61 RBI. He struck out 109 times and walked 52 times. That'd be good for a 20.6% strikeout rate, and he's just below league average throughout his career, as well as being just above league average in walk rate throughout his career. Needless to say, the Reds have a ton of infielders, and young infielders at that, and the Mariners have a ton of good young pitching. These two teams match up really, really well in a trade, and I would assume that the Reds would be looking at somebody like a Bryce Miller or a Bryan Woo in these deals because they need, again, someone who's been there, done that. I think Bryce Miller, probably because he's a little bit more projectable, in my opinion, just because he hasn't really been injured. He is probably good for 160 to 180 innings next year for the Reds if he was to get traded there. Whereas Woo, it's tough to say with the injury history as well as him going way over his innings cap in 2023. So I think Bryce Miller makes a little bit more sense there. If you were to trade Bryce Miller there, I would want one of Matt McLain or Spencer Steer in return. I Bleav that Spencer Steer is probably going to be playing the outfield for them next year. But again, it's possible that maybe they'd be willing to get rid of one of these infielders, especially now they just signed Candelario. I mean, I think that Steer makes the most sense because he's a first baseman, third baseman, and outfielder. I think it makes the most sense for Spencer Steer, and he could play third base for the Seattle Mariners every day. And you can move that platoon of Luis Urias and Josh Rojas back to second base, and you could still put Steer in the outfield if you need to. Again, I don't think this is a match made in heaven, but I think that it makes a heck of a lot of sense for the Reds to be asking the Mariners about their pitching. It's just whether or not the Mariners are going to be willing to give up that pitching that's going to be the problem. And I think they have to. They absolutely have to. They have also been rumored to be in on Mitch Garver, according to Jon Morosi, who has been yapping all offseason. So who knows with Morosi right now. But with that being said, then Garver could be the everyday DH, I guess, for the Seattle Mariners, and he could catch every once in a while. Well, I don't love that. But nonetheless, he could DH for you every day. That would be filling 2 spots for relatively cheap. Garver's not going to cost you a ton of money. And I think that that would make the team better than it was in 2023. As long as Spencer Steer or Matt McLain, I don't even care. Give me one of them. Give me one. I don't care which one. For Bryce Miller straight up, I'm in. And honestly, I might want a little bit more in return. I'll even take Noelvi Marte back. Just saying, I'll take Noelvi Marte back if the Reds are willing to give him up. Hey, why not? But maybe like a Spencer Steer plus like a, I don't know, some lower level lottery ticket guy. Just because it's so hard to come by young controllable pitching, whereas it's a little bit easier to find young controllable infielders. I'm not saying it's super easy, but it is easier than young controllable pitching. Unfortunately, the guy that the Reds are most likely to give up and the guy that I want the least is Jonathan India. And I mean, obviously there's a reason for that. He is easily the worst of all the guys we just named, and he's also the oldest of all the guys we just named. Does India fit on this team? Maybe, but he's more, I would rather run out Josh Rojas and Luis Urias than Jonathan India, personally. And I would not be willing to give up more than Emerson Hancock for India as well. I don't think that Bryce Miller or Bryan Woo, I think that both of them are way, way too valuable to trade for just Jonathan India, in my opinion. And if the Reds are willing to trade one of their infielders, I think India's the last guy we should be asking for. Encarnacion-Strand doesn't necessarily fit. Elly De La Cruz isn't going anywhere in my opinion. With Jeimer Candelario out there as well, I think the Mariners do have a fine line to thread here with Spencer Steer, Matt McLain, and Noelvi Marte. I would assume Marte's also not available because he's one of the top infield prospects in all of baseball, or at least he was. So I would assume Matt McLain or Spencer Steer, and honestly, there's no proof in the pudding to say that either of those guys are available either. But nonetheless, they're fun guys to talk about. A trade between the Reds and Mariners makes a lot of sense, especially with what the Mariners need the rest of this offseason. And Jerry Dipoto laid out exactly what the Mariners are looking for as we go throughout the rest of the 2023 offseason in this video on the screen now. I want you to check that one out next. I appreciate you guys watching this one, and go Mariners.